Hello and welcome to another episode of Think About It with Osita Ifezwe. Today I have Reggie Rusan.
It's been a long
It's
time.
been a long time.
Yeah,
Huh?
yeah, yeah.
Nice to see you again. You're looking
Likewise,
good.
likewise. Likewise. Thank you, and you as well.
Nice. It's always good to chat with you.
Yeah, I think there's more of me to love than there was last time that we met.
But it's all loving, man.
Yeah.
Nice. Good to see you again, man.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
For those who don't know you, tell us a bit about yourself.
Oh, I'm a American. Been living in Finland continuously for the last 10 years. Start coming here in 2000 when I was working for KONE as the global head of IT operations. Kind of strange American that way, where I've been working for Finnish companies for the last 25 years, including my own, which is Simple Tech Solutions, which I still have open, but it's a little bit dormant at the moment. I've been working here at eSystems for almost the last 5 years.
Okay, beautiful. I know when you were, I think back in the days, Simple Tech
Yeah,
started,
yeah,
and
well,
it was, back when the GDPRS
yeah,
was
yeah,
kind of becoming a thing in Europe,
yeah,
and you found a niche from that.
yes.
Tell us, first of all, let's go back.
Hmm.
What brought you to Finland? You said a bit about KONE.
Yeah.
What did you do for KONE?
Yeah, I always tell everybody I came for the food and the weather, but we know what the status of that is.
Yeah.
So I worked for KONE for 15 years, and most of that in a global capacity. I started in the U.S. and then took a project in London for a couple years, and then took global responsibility in Brussels, stayed there for 5 years. Then went back to Chicago for 3 years, and then back to Brussels for another 2 or 3 years. And at that time, I was working half-time in between here and Finland. I mean, in Brussels. So, and at the end of my career, I met my Finnish ex-wife at the time, and we had a young son who's now almost 12, and that's sort of what brought me here ultimately. When I left KONE is when I actually moved to Finland.
Okay.
So that's
you seem to have a story.
yeah,
about
yeah,
journey.
yeah. Unfortunately, it's the common one, but that's why I'm here.
Oh, that's nice. And we know back in the days when you used to also be part of, Integrate nonprofit, where we kind of tried to address some of the challenges that immigrants had, and you were very involved in terms of bringing people together, and that was something that I appreciated about you from the very beginning. You were very good at pulling people and resources together. So thinking about from that time until now, what are some of the changes that you've experienced as someone who is had the American perspective and the Finnish perspective as being an immigrant and also an entrepreneur?
There's been lots that's changed, but I can't say necessarily for the better. So globally, I would say the views on immigrants or international workforce is declining. Here in Finland, as well, as you can see, that with the political climate that's happening, it's becoming harder and harder to live and work here. They're going to increase the demands on the permanent resident person that lives here, which I'm not so sure I understand. If Finland needs anything, it needs to increase the tax base, and of course you could do that organically, but the results are too far away. So the only way to do that sort of tactically is to do it through bringing in competent resources into the country that can add positively to the GDP. And we don't seem to be taking strides in that. We're more focused on keeping people out than selecting the right people to come in and making them part of society. When I think the last sort of integrate presentation I did, I kind of presented Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And because I think it actually goes back to how do you successfully integrate a person into society. And Finland is really good at the bottom layer. So giving you a safe place to live, and and making sure your basic well-being is taken care of. But you don't actually feel integrated until you start to thrive in society and you feel like you are making a positive contribution to society. And so, most immigrants want to be at that, fourth and fifth tier of the hierarchy of needs. But we don't set our sights there. We set our sights on taking care of the basic needs of safety and comfort versus, okay, what does a person need to flourish? And then how do they become really productive in society? So, I was hoping we would be moving into that direction, but now we don't even seem to want to give people the basic needs. So it is still possible. But it takes lots of hard work, and I kind of openly say, and even though I'm not so active in Integrate, I'm still heavily champion for the introduction of more international resources to the Finnish society, because that's just what the economy needs long term, and so I've been quite vocal in lots of avenues. As well as I'm still trying to pull people together and get people to work together, both nationals and internationals, so to help support the cause.
It's really nice that you highlighted that, especially I remember that Maslow hierarchy of needs that you presented. And I like the way you put it, that usually the focus is on the bottom part. But for immigrants and people who have stayed a very long time in Finland, that bottom part is not so comfortable anymore. They want to rise.
Right.
And if there's this ceiling on rising, it impacts well-being.
Yeah.
It impacts on the person's ability to feel that I belong
Yep.
to the society. And before we started, I mentioned this, that if I lived in America for a very long time, the way I've lived in Finland, and you ask me where are you from, I would proudly say I'm American.
Yeah.
Because the society finds a way of kind of giving you the opportunity, even though we know there are challenges that exist there.
Yeah.
The same doesn't apply to Finland, because you would hardly see people here who are kind of feeling that they are part of the society, even when they have the work and the basic necessities that the society presents. And this is a problem that we are trying to look at. And I like that you highlighted that. And I would probe further into this. But first, let's think about your time as an entrepreneur. You were with Simple Tech Solutions. And what are some of the challenges you saw as an immigrant entrepreneur? Because we know that there are quite a lot of resources out there, but what are some of the challenges, and how did you overcome some of those challenges?
Yeah, and it kind of ties back even to the topic before. So Finland, I have this theory that Finns don't typically buy from, and they don't hire people they don't know. And it really doesn't have so much to do with your ethnicity, but that's a component of it as well, because there's all sorts of biases in every society. So, but here, because it's a little bit more closed, because it's a smaller industry, it's difficult to break into it. You can, it just takes lots of effort from the international's perspective, coupled with some luck, and then identifying people that you can, nationals that are in the places that you want to be in, and you can make them part of your tribe, or more importantly, they see you as part of their tribe. I also have this theory that the Finns are very tribal in nature. And again, if you're in the tribe, you have full access. If you're not in the tribe, then you don't have any access, and it's really binary. It's on or off. And so, and again, you can do it if you can identify the right tribes that you need to be a part of, and that's very difficult when you come in, because you have no idea of like some of the tribes I'm in now, I'd have never known existed in Finland, when I first came in. And, not that I'm a part of every tribe that I want to be, but, I noticed that that's sort of the key to getting to that third, fourth, and fifth layer of the hierarchy of needs, because then you're more fully accepted. Speaking the language does help, which I do not do, or I speak it really poorly. I could never have a business meeting in Finnish, and I'm currently looking at pursuing the Swedish route to see if that's easier for several reasons. One's because it opens up different tribes as well to me. But one of the issues I think that Finland has is that as immigrants in the past have always come here to conquer. So they have a bias towards immigrants just from the very beginning, because people have always come to take. And people like us who have kids here, we want to contribute and we want to give more than we take because we want a better life for our kids. True. Right? But that's not recognized by society. It's only looked at, we want to be here sitting on Kayla. That's not what, that we never wake up in the morning to think that's what I want to do today. Yeah, right. So, no, I'm here to make a positive change, and I'm trying to move the needle in several areas. And most of my international friends are the same way.
Yeah. Because I think one of the factors, maybe from my perspective, the cultural perspective, that we are seen to want to show good example to the kids.
Yeah.
So we don't believe in handouts.
Yeah.
So let's go work for it.
Yeah.
Because we're showing those kids that, hey,
this is what's necessary.
And I like that you really highlighted that, because we need to stop thinking, we need to start thinking beyond the jobs, beyond getting people into jobs, but actually getting them into society.
Yeah, thriving.
Thinking ways to kind of make well-being one of the core. In terms of how well are these people really integrated? How well, do their kids integrate in societies? And this is something that I find in my work is challenging, because when you talk to a lot of young kids, you would notice what you just mentioned, that they see that there's a very big disconnect.
Yeah.
They don't know how to handle it.
You're right. Yep.
So they just find themselves in a loop where they cannot deal with the situation or understand why it's happening. I like that you mentioned the tribe, because it's really important to find your tribe. What about someone who has no possibility? You are an extrovert. You know how to make friends.
Yeah.
People who don't know how to connect. How do you get those people to find the tribe? Because unless you are in one of those tribes, you find it very difficult to get into places in Finland.
Yeah.
So how can we help such people to find a place?
And again, that has nothing to do with international or national. It's more personality. And I find that my friends that are more extroverted, obviously they naturally try to seek these tribes and look for networking and doing these things. But my friends that are not, they really struggle with it. And so, they need to befriend, someone that's going to help them get into these tribes. Different avenues, like I know I openly share in a WhatsApp group that I started, different opportunities that are out there for networking and expanding the horizon. Because when I first came into the country, unlike, I've lived in the UK, I've lived in Brussels, and when I moved to Finland, I immediately sensed, okay, this is different. In neither of those places that I lived in before did I have to look for a tribe. Did I have to look for, people who were looking for me to add value? It was just sort of expected in those areas. If you're here, you have a purpose and you're trying to execute on that purpose. And again, they're neither one are welfare states, so they weren't expecting that I came to London or I came to Brussels for to be in a welfare sort of situation. And I interviewed, really, I identified some of the African Americans that were here and some Africans that were here, and I met with them just to see what were the rules of engagement. And I could quickly see that the well-being of these people is not good, right? The people that had been here kind of 20 years before me, they had, Finland was even a much different place then. They had suffered from loneliness, and that caused really detrimental issues to their health. And most of them were struggling with some sort of issue or abuse, and so I quickly kind of put together my tribe to make sure that I wouldn't have this as an issue. And so I have friends that I can reach out. And if you even we were closer in a tribe before, but when you reached out, it was like, yeah, I can make time, right? Because you have to make yourself available. And I would tell those people that are introverted, you just have to make yourself available to get out and to network. And because again, we probably last saw each other outside of the restaurant. We probably last saw each other in a business sense, right over here 5-6 years ago. Yeah. And and so we still keep those things, going. In LinkedIn, if I see you made a post, I try to always support it. Because I know that my friends will see your post, and then they will go, "Oh, Osita's part of Reggie's tribe."
Yes.
Right. And those sort of things, in my opinion, are really important from the international person coming in. They need to start attaching themselves to people that have a tribe. And I open my tribe up to anybody. So that was just one of the things I learned early on, is that you need to be known by multiple people here.
Yeah, I really like the points that you're bringing out. It's very salient, because now you touched on something also which I have kind of noticed also within the immigrant community. Well enough, we don't get access to tribes outside the immigrant community. And I try to find out the factors responsible for this. You mentioned immigrants supporting immigrants. And this is also one big challenge that we've faced within a lot of the immigrant community.
Yeah.
That there's a very little space that people are kind of not having the opportunity. So the feeling of, why should I support him or her in whatever venture they are doing? Why is it important that we look at building more network, more tribes within the immigrant community?
Yeah, but let me talk about why that behavior, I believe that behavior is because there's this concept of when you operate in an environment of lack, where you feel like you lack the things that are basic, it causes you to be very insular, right? And you always feel like there's not enough for Osita and Reggie. So I have to survive, so I have to protect Reggie first, right? As opposed to saying, if Osita can break through, then he can help me break through as well, and he can expand the environment, right? And so if we could, as internationals, just break down that barrier and start to, again, think about, if you give more than you take, and if everybody is doing that, then the tribe in general, right, grows.
Amen to that.
Yeah.
Amen.
And so if the tribe, if you're a tribe of takers, it will never grow.
And it's really nice that you have kept this going.
Yeah.
Because I know even when you were, having your business and, knocking doors,
Yeah.
I saw that spirit, that you were still finding a way to say, hey, you talk to this person.
Yeah.
Connect to this person. That's really nice. Yeah. And this is something that we need to do more of, because I see that we grow by lifting other people up.
Yeah.
The same way you talk about supporting whatever content I put there, you also kind of grow from doing that, because people start seeing you as contributing also, not only for your personal interest, but for the overall interest of everyone. So it's something that we want to find a way to do more. What are your secret sauce in terms of doing that? 1-2 tips where to start from.
It's just, it's born out of necessity. I feel that that the tribe cannot be successful if we are not hunting together, if we're not gathering together, right? That that's the basis of why tribes were put together in the beginning, because the collective sum is better than the individuals, and so again, when I moved here, I noticed that it was definitely different, and that unfortunately, as internationals, we adopted that insular culture that you have here versus the tribal culture that we all come from, right? And so, again, going to Nigeria, where you're from, of course, not everybody gets along, not everybody works so well together, but the tribes are so much bigger, and people just know, hey, I've got to support my family, or I've got to support my tribe, or the tribe dies, right? If the tribe dies, then my success is going to be limited. And so, I had a good friend who told me that, when you come here, you just have to, you get to get connected and network. And so my first thought was, okay, I'm on a mission to connect everybody with everybody. If that's all it takes, then let's just get busy doing it. And so that's the only secret sauce I can sort of claim to have.
It's already the sauce that makes it. It's what makes the difference. And I would always point to one or two examples. There's you. There's Verena, who is doing also a lot with, just by smiling and being nice. And when I have conversations with her, she tells you, I don't smile all the time. But I make it my resolve that anytime I step out, out of that door, it's to be a shining light to people. And the same way you felt that, okay, hey, putting people together would always make a way for you also to grow. And this is something we can learn as what am I best at doing, and how can I use that to build someone else? And when we think of that, it would kind of be collective over time. So it's really nice. You touched on the well-being part, which is something that I have also noticed, that long-term immigrants that have been here tend to struggle, even when they have the jobs, when they have access to things that they need, but somehow they still struggle to fit in after a very long time. What would you say to people like that in terms of what are some of the things that we as a community can start doing to collectively to notice those people and to help them?
So, one of the things that, going back to one of the first questions that you asked me was, what changes have I seen? Like, I know, at least in the African diaspora community, we have far more events and activities than we ever have. And I think that helps build us and strengthens us as a community. And I always feel honored just to be a part of them. Right, to me, it's so amazing that people are allowing me access to the tribe, and so we have to reach out to those people. One of my good tribe friends here, who's back in the U.S. because he wasn't so successful here, and he's killing it there. But we still keep in contact. Hey man, how are you doing? How's it going? Are you moving the needle? What's going on? Does your family back here need anything? And so, basically, how can I help? And he reaches out to me. Hey, how's it going? How did that deal go? What happened? Are you moving? Is there somebody in my network that can help? And so, if you can, make yourself available. Right, I'm glad you reached out. I'm glad that that others in the community said, "Hey, can you help Osita and I?" Yeah, of course. I just got to make the time. And so, I don't want to ever be perceived as I'm only out for self, and this is what you get. Oh, I talked to him and he didn't want to do. He's not like that. No, that I don't ever want that to be part of my reputation. So sometimes it's taxing, and there are times when I do have to say no, or can I get to this? In a month or whatever, because I have a lot of things going on. And I just can't prioritize it at the moment. So, and that's another thing for well-being. We have to protect ourselves as well, but still And now I will also say, hey, you need to talk to John, as an example. You need to talk to Kingsley. You need to talk to Osita. I'm not the only person that holds the keys, right? I don't think there's anything necessarily genius about what I'm doing or saying. So, and I know there's others in the community that can provide the same type of atmosphere.
Yeah. I like what point you brought up now. The need to be frank and honest with people.
Yeah.
If you can do it, I will.
Yeah.
If I can't do it, I cannot
Yeah.
do it. And don't commit to things that you are not able to follow through
Yeah.
with, because
Yeah,
that's
'cause
also what brings the strife and the problems. So it's something that we need to actually start learning to be very frank. And it shouldn't offend anyone to
Exactly.
say. For example, I know we tried to book a meeting for
and I'm like, oh man, the customer called. I need to move the meeting. The customer's called. So
So I can't take it personal, because I should understand that, hey, this person is actually having other things that I might not necessarily see or know. So always trying to get back to it and finding ways to do it. So it's something that we really need to start working on, in terms of be there, committed, and be out there in terms of helping people. When you think about wrapping up, when we put it in 1-2 words, what are some of the things that you would give to anyone coming to Finland right now as an immigrant? What would you say to anyone who is starting a business as an immigrant?
So to me, it depends on the type of business that you're starting. So like mine was in consulting service, and it's a trust-based business, right? Not that it's better, it's just different that if you have a product like a cleaning or a restaurant or these other things. And so customer acquisition in a trust-based business is really difficult. So you have to identify where you want to be, and you have to start building your brand. People need to know why they're going to go to you. If I'm glad that there's a lot more African restaurants here now, and so people know why you want to go there, because I want this feeling of home and whatever. They weren't there 10 years ago when I came in, and so from that part there are a lot more opportunities, but we need to people can hold on to the principle of when you network to give more than you take, and then people will always seek you out. Right? And so I think that one of the issues that people have when they network is that they take a selfish approach to networking. And so that's why maybe their network doesn't grow as fast as they want it to. And especially if you're actively helping others grow, they're going to immediately start to promote you.
You're singing a good song.
And so that's what I would recommend to people coming in. And even if it fails, you still have taken sort of that higher road, right? And I haven't seen where it has failed. And so the people that I know that are successful, they've taken that road. And then at some point in time, you do need to make the decision: is this for me? Right? I've tried this, and it kills your self-esteem. It kills your ego if you are repeatedly unsuccessful. And just because you're unsuccessful here does not mean you're going to be unsuccessful in other areas. And sometimes you might have to make the decision: hey, I need to go back home, or I need to go to another market, because failure is really not an option long term. And so, and I always tell people you have to know when to say when also.
I was going to start wrapping it up.
Yeah.
But you brought up some very, very germane point that I think I would want to touch on. I would want us to touch on.
Yeah.
And this is also the question of, when it's not working here, to try elsewhere. And I understand what that really means, because often it's good for your mental well-being to see, okay, why not try an option? Then you see other opportunities, and when you come back, probably you come back better. In that way. So this is also something I'm telling, especially me from an African background, and we always have this thing that, hey, back home is always, it's not so good. It's not
Yeah.
that conducive here. There's a lot of problem and challenges. But I see a lot of opportunities
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
those places.
Yeah, I do too.
In ways that Finland is already, if I live in Finland, for example, a lot of things already are structured.
Mm-hmm.
So the opportunities aren't there.
Yeah.
To make changes per se.
Yeah.
But you get to places where you see problems everywhere, and what I'm seeing is if I could do that, if I could do this, and this is something that we could start looking at tapping into, building bridges across, continents, across places.
Yeah.
And this also applies to if I'm doing a business here and it's not working, when also to say, hey, it's time to pack up shop and do something else.
Yeah.
Because that also it's good for well-being.
Yeah.
And you touched on the networking for win-win kind of thing, which is something, unfortunately, in our community, you find that the approach is at times one way. What am I going to get from it? What is in it for me? Rather than, okay, what can I give so that I can also receive in that way? And this is something that you've highlighted very well. I want to touch on this very part, which is also the men, especially men from ethnic minorities in Finland. You tend not to see them in a lot of places. And we understand that, yes, the society we live in is generally, empowered by women. Yeah. But what can we do to help such ones to be more visible, to be more there in events? Because at times I go to events and I look around and I might be the only one or two black person in the room who is a man. And I wonder what's happening. Where's everyone?
That's very, very often for me. Yeah. One, again, we can share the opportunities to people who are in a place to take advantage of those. I think it always starts, with yourself and making sure you're building your brand, and you have to show people why they should talk to Reggie, why they should talk to Osita. What can he do that's going to help benefit whatever situation I've got? And I don't think that a lot of us are active enough in LinkedIn and in business communities. We tend to, because it's a safe place. Now that there are more diaspora events, we go to the diaspora events, but we don't look for what other events are out there. And so, pre-COVID, there was tons of events. Now, post-COVID, the events are starting to happen more and more. I again, tried to share them, and I actually had the situation where I finally got to LinkedIn and was able to settle down for a second, and I saw lots of items that I thought the international community would take benefit of, and I shared them, but they happened a week ago. So, it was, and I had to pull them down because it was like, and it just, sometimes you're moving so fast you don't pay attention. But I share everything, and that's the thing that I think we also could start doing is just sharing everything, because you don't know who's going to be able to benefit from it. Some people think, should I share this one because this person might get some value? Share it. Yeah. Right? Because you have no idea, one, who can benefit from it, and two, how it's going to help build your brand. Right.
I have a lot to learn from that.
Yeah. Most of us do. Most of us do. And it may cost you a little time, but that's all it costs. Time is precious. Yeah. And again, we don't always have it. I'm like at today running. This is, I've had 3 customer meetings, before we started at 11 today. So, and I have several more after this. And I need to, take my team to lunch, because you need to keep all those relationships going well. And so, yeah, and then I think sometimes people don't understand that. They just go like, oh, he didn't help. You have no idea what's going on in that person. So give them the benefit of the doubt, right? Right? And if you think that, I know Osita, if he could, he would. He must have something going on, and I hope it's successful. Yeah. You have to keep that positive mindset. I hope that brother succeeds at whatever he's trying to do.
It's really a mindset that we all struggle
Yeah.
with once in a while.
Yeah.
And that's something, like I said, I need to learn.
Yeah.
Because one thing I do badly is social media. I am forced to be in LinkedIn now because that's the easiest
Yeah.
way.
But your
my
podcast, you've
my
been doing
level
good
of
with those.
engagement
Yeah.
is like
Yeah.
I'm just dropping and out.
Yeah.
In that way. But it's really nice that you are, pointing out this point. And I'm sure someone out there would see or would hear and see ways they can, work on one or two things. Because I know you've been here for a very long time,
Yeah.
and you have seen a lot of things that you could share.
Yeah.
And one thing I'm trying to highlight is how long-term immigrants can actually start sharing some of this information to people who are just, new or who are still trying to find their way. Because I feel like when I came to Finland, I would have thrived better if someone has given me all the information that I know right now.
Yeah.
Set to go. So
Yeah.
this is something that we really want to keep doing. So we look forward to doing more of this kind of events in terms of, pushing agendas that would help not only ourselves, but to see that our kids, even if we are not here, are able to thrive in a society that we love to be in.
Yeah.
And we want to see them growing. Thank you, Reggie.
Yeah, no worries,
man.
man.
We could do this all the time.
Our
time is limited.
Time is limited.
Thank you for being available again. And I really appreciate all the things that you've been doing and you've done up till now.
Great, and I need to come hear one of those TED Talks.
You're definitely having an opportunity
it's
now. We're gonna do something about that. Nice one.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, guys, and it's nice to be having this. It's nice to have this chat with Reggie, and we hope to continue this information. I hope you found some of the tips he has given very helpful, and if you want to engage, I'm going to be putting his link below in the description so that you can reach out if you want to ask anything. I'm sure Reggie is always available to kind of help anyone. And also, if you want to reach out with comments or in any ways that we can help you at the Think About It with Osita Facebook podcast, please do reach out. Thank you once again, and until next week when we meet again, stay strong.
Yeah.